G'day everybody, welcome back to the ESPN Footy Podcast for another season. Season 6, would you believe it? My name is Matt Walsh. I'm joined by Jake Michaels and champion artist Christian Joly. Gents, 6 years? It feels like
it can't be.
I think I say that every year. Fourth year or the fifth year, but the sixth year.
6 years feels like, well, that's a long time.
What were you doing 6 years ago?
Well, starting this, I guess.
Well, that was the obvious answer, but I was kind of more alluding to, how old would you have been? 25, 26?
20... Yeah, nearly 26.
Young and bright-eyed in the caper of journalism and watching footy and...
Still doing the same, I think. Maybe not so bright-eyed anymore, but...
bit more bleary-eyed.
It's been, well, what a change. I mean, when you consider this new studio that we're in today, you go right back to the first one we were in, the makeshift cupboard, basically. We had to dust that down and get all that ready for episode 1 all those years ago with us three and Neil as well. So... it has come a long way. A lot of episodes, a lot of fun.
Hasn't it ever? Hey, Christian, how's champion data come along in the last 6 years? I guess kind of throwing back to, what was that, 2017? My maths isn't very good, but 6 years, a lot can change, I guess, in the statistical landscape. Can you kind of remember back to when we first started the podcast and what was happening that was new and what, I guess, now is just sort of commonplace in the industry?
Yeah, I think pressure rating was probably the main one. That was probably only...
Yeah, that was...
It had probably been done for about 3 or 4 years, but only live for probably 2, so that was still in its infancy back then. But now we'll need to... I think we need to buck some trends here on this podcast, though, because the studies all tell you that you usually peak... in AFL, you usually peak at your 6th year, and that's sort of... that's the zenith that you reach, and you'll...
Well, we still need to do our 100th episode giveaway.
200th episode giveaway.
Be close to 200. I don't know.
Veterans by that point, I think is what they describe when you hit 200 games in footy. No, don't say that because we do have the new digs, as we've kind of said.
Exactly. It can only get better.
The studio, new intro, flash new logo as well. Thanks to the team over at Disney as well for that. So, look, plenty to get to. We're going to talk footy again all year, which is great. We've got some exciting announcements later on as well. But there's a heap to get to, including what is new for champion data this season in 2024. We're going to talk the best 50 players coming into the season, Jake, which is your little passion project that you've been doing for a few years now. So not the most... some robust feedback, shall we say.
The hardest thing I do all year, I must say. But we'll get into that a little later.
We'll go on the record. We'll be talking about our rises, our sliders, our flag winner, our wooden spoon, all that kind of stuff, and our big calls for the season as well, among a heap of stuff.
You got a big call this year? That was something from year 1, I reckon. Your big call. Your
Gold Coast will win a game. Wasn't that it?
That's it. I was right.
If he's saying we've peaked at year 6, I think year 1 was kind of the slow start. We were the rookie that was trying to get on the park. That's it. No, but we do have plenty to talk about, so we might as well get cracking straight away. Christian, there is something I want to ask you off the top, and it's the practice games that have been sanctioned by they haven't been really sanctioned by the AFL, but the practice games, you guys haven't been keeping stats for those because I logged on trying to find who had played well and who'd done bits and pieces in the pracky scratch games on the weekend and couldn't find anything.
Yeah, no stats covered for those ones. So they're, again, it's just the category they fall into, and I think I noticed it watching it on Fox and KO as well. They were match simulations, so Champion Data weren't sort of engaged to provide a service for that. But then I spoke to sort of management of Champion Data, and it was the AFL had said those games were basically glorified training sessions. So the AFL provided the umpires, and that was all. So the timekeepers, the interchange stewards, the venues, all that sort of stuff had to be sourced by the clubs. So they're not sort of just not official on the fixture. So I think because they end up on TV and everyone's sort of watching them.
People assume that the stats
they sort of fit in, but I think that's the AFL were quite, again, when you read the fixture, they're quite clear that week 1 was match sim, week 2 starting tonight is actually the actual preseason where, everything ramps up and everything goes, we capture as much as we do starting tonight as we do during the home and away season. But the first week was just match sim games that, again, it's just, as I said, it's more a directive from the AFL, is they're not official games.
Do you get Trigger happy, like he wanting to do the stats for these kind of things? Or
a little bit. We have done them before, and they can be hard. I mean, and because they are training games, teams will say that they're going to use 25 players and 5 on the bench, but they might just put 10 on the bench for one of the quarters because people are getting a bit tired. And it's sort of very hard to sort of, when they start throwing in VFL players in the 5th quarter, if you like, in the 6th quarter. So, I mean, you love to get all the data you can, but then again, a lot of those times we're covering and we're sort of saying, well, you can't compare game A to game B. So they're very much, you get the stats for that one game and then you throw it out because that game was obviously 30 minutes longer than the other one that was played at the same time, et cetera, et cetera. So,
last question on this. As a stats man, the 7 quarters must drive you nuts.
Yeah, well, 7 sevenths. Yeah, exactly. That's why. Yeah. You've got they've got periods in US sports. So
Yeah.
I'll say, it's the
Yeah.
sixth
Makes
period
sense.
and the
That's a good
seventh
point.
period. So.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, speaking of champion data, I guess sort of staying on that mindset, how has your off-season been? Obviously now these days you're doing a lot more than just footy, and there is a bit more to sort of occupy the offices during the quote unquote off-season. What's been happening?
Yeah, well, again, that's probably one of the biggest changes. 6 years ago, probably our off-season was produced doing the prospectus, which
Yes.
was a publication we did for, I think, maybe 16 years worth or so, but that's all sort of fallen by the wayside.
No chance for comeback.
Definitely not in the print format. I mean, it just wasn't doable in
Shame.
terms of falling into place. But yeah, like in the last 6 years, I mean, we picked up horse racing and tennis, and I do a little bit of the US lacrosse, the NLL. We do the outdoor lacrosse,
The NLL.
the netball and things like that. So yeah, plenty of sports going on in the Champion Data's four walls between October to round 1 AFL season. It's sport pumping out. But yeah, no, I've been watching my Saskatchewan Rush go well in the NLL, but got done 19-6 yesterday. So yeah, not so happy about that one.
I'll have to Google that one later. Fair enough. Well, hopefully that doesn't mean that you are neglecting footy during the off-season, because I guess fans, clubs, the media, we kind of all want to see strides forward in this space. New stats come out or twists on old stats or stuff like that. Have you been working on bits and pieces?
No, definitely. I mean, football's still our number one and our core sport, and that's, we're always challenging ourselves within the four walls again of making sure that AFL stays as our primary focus of the company. It is our biggest sport, and it's sort of our number one client. So yeah, still been tinkering away with the stats, and probably where we're sort of getting to now, it's rather than trying to capture, a lot of the stats we click buttons for and actually capture as they happen. Now it's about sort of drawing in what we've already captured and using the GPS and positional data sort of, in more harmony in such. So knowing exactly when a team goes inside 50, how many players are actually standing inside the forward 50 or inside 30 metres from goal. Being able to get all of that from the time sync and the GPS data is probably what we've most been playing around with during the off season.
And so I guess that means that you can start to look at twists on stats where it's, and the one that you've got in front of us here is called the 100x rating, which is basically, it takes into account every position and the expected ratings per 100 minutes played in that position. So if you're, for instance, Jack Sinclair and you're playing in the back line, but then when you float forward, sort of your expected ratings points per 100 minutes in each position. And if you're above average, or if you're doing better than the average, or if you're doing worse than the average. And that's kind of something that's new this year as well.
Yeah, again, it's probably separate to the GPS. So that's, looking at, again, with the 666 rules, made it much easier for us to capture who's actually playing what position across the game. Obviously, when general play breaks out, you're sort of tracking who's pushing forward or pushing back to make those changes. But yeah, in the last 3 or 4 years, teams have really returned back to that defined 666 position rule. So again, a lot of our, we've spoken about ratings and rankings and trying to boil everything down to one number on this podcast plenty of times before. And it's probably the 100x ratings is something that started to creep out a little bit in the second half of last year. Some people might have heard it, but you'll probably start hearing it a lot more in the media landscape this year. And it's just taking rating points to another level. So we already talk about rating points, and we know who averages the most rating points across the game, and they're always going to be midfielders.
Yep.
So actually having a look at and breaking down and say, and again, you use Jack Sinclair as a great example, looking at Jack Sinclair and going, hey, as a general defender, he outrates everyone by 5 rating points per game because of the time he gets to spend in the middle compared to someone who's just playing, raw, like someone like Christian Salem or something who's just playing half-back and never getting centre bounces. So all we're able to do is actually look at Jack Sinclair and go, well, you'd expect him to actually get more with the time he's spending in the midfield. So that's where the 100x comes in. It looks at, if you spent 50 minutes as a midfielder, you should be getting half as much as a midfielder averages per 100 minutes.
Yes.
And
That's
again,
fair
the same
for
in
everybody,
defence. So again, it's looking at Sinclair and going, rather than him getting 10 rating points across the game, he got 8 rating points in his 50 minutes as a defender and his 16 rating points as a midfielder, which means he was either, X above for a defender in that 50 minutes and X above for a forward, so for a midfielder. So again, that it's really looking at game situational stuff. So again, looking at the GPS stuff and talking about the inside 50, talking about at a stoppage, where is everyone standing and what sort of thing.
Okay.
And when we go inside 50, how many numbers are in there? This is probably a lot more looking at, okay, when a player is playing in a certain position, how much output do we get personally from him? But also, too, the next step we're going to go with this is look at how your team actually functions when you're playing in that position. So Petrarca, when he plays forward, what is Melbourne's clearance differential exactly when he's playing as a forward? What is Melbourne's score per inside 50 rate when Petrarca's inside 50? So they're the things we're starting to hopefully sort of move towards, where we can actually break down the game and say, okay, when rather than how many times did something happen, it's more about when did something happen.
I mean, all data is important, and the clubs want all of this stuff. But I imagine something like this would be super important to have, because Petrarca's a perfect example, and we spoke about it quite a few times last year. He's so good in the midfield, and then he goes forward, and he can do it better than anybody else, as the numbers will suggest. So I guess it's all about where do you deploy him and for how long, and that's the kind of question that all these clubs are asking.
I guess give us Petrarca's stats here. So I'm looking at this in front of me here, and you've got these are last year's numbers, so obviously not including the scratch matches that we've just had. But Christian Petrarca is a midfield. He is 3.32 ratings points per 100 minutes above the expected average.
Yeah.
When he goes forward, that's 7.01 ratings points above the expected average per 100 minutes.
So that shows that we know how good he is as a midfielder, but he's twice as good as a forward compared.
Correct, yeah. So that plus 3.3 doesn't sound like a big number and a big sexy number, but plus 3.3 would put him in the top 10 or 15 performing midfielders. When he's in there per 100 minutes, he's performing 3 points better than anyone else. But then he almost gets double as good as a forward, which we haven't seen him spend as much minutes. But again, this was all cut to minimum of 300 minutes as a forward last year.
So you said it wasn't specifically tied to the GPS data, but then how do you differentiate time in the midfield versus...
Yep, so it's all tracked by, as I said, with our matchups. And, I could have sat here in 2018, 2019, and we would have said matchups was on its deathbed. There was just rolling mauls. Everyone was, after a goal, you would never have 6 people standing in the forward 50. You'd have 3 defenders. You'd have 4 wingers, and it was getting a little bit. We were still trying to match up who was on who. You want to know. Again, Finn McGuinness tagged Nick Dacos last year. Had he done that 4 years ago, we would have tracked that quite heavily. But it was getting more of who is your defender in this game. Well, they've got 9 of them. So the 666 has really brought back, now you really need to define, okay, Bailey Smith, you're going to know when he's playing forward or midfield, because we can't sort of hide him on the wing and sort of have 3 wingers and you don't know which one's going to push forward. You actually have to start with your forwards up forward and your wingers on the wing and your defenders.
It's interesting.
I am still just a little bit skeptical about all this. Remember our discussion late last year about Dustin Martin? I reckon we had this discussion on the podcast about where he was playing. And everyone was saying, he's got to be an All-Australian half forward. The numbers throughout the year, or the tracking would say he played the majority of the year as a half forward. The end of the year, the last 2 games, my eye was telling me it was 80% of the midfield that he was playing, but it doesn't back that up. So if you're starting a centre bounce at half forward, and then you run into the play and you're in amongst the ball in the midfield for 10 minutes,
as I said,
you're still being tracked as a forward, right?
As I said, you've got to switch with someone. So if there's 4 midfielders and Dusty, exactly that, we have to make the assumption if there's 4 midfielders that we've set for Richmond, and they are Taranto, Prestia, Jack Graham, and whoever else is in there, and Dustin Martin rolls up there, and all of those midfielders are still around that area, then Dustin Martin stays as a forward. He's just playing, as I said. He doesn't become another midfielder. No, because teams are sending their forwards up. They're not saying, all right, let's play with 6 midfielders now. They're telling Dustin Martin, you're the forward, you go up to the stoppage. Yeah. But when the ball goes forward from the stoppage, you're the one responsible. It's not Jack Graham or Dion Presti I'm worried about getting, but you're the one that needs to be in the forward line. So it is. It's based on there's 18 positions on the ground, or 20 if you look at we got loose men and things like that. But it is. It's a 1-for-1 swap. If Dustin Martin goes and starts following the play around the ball, but the other 4 midfielders there, yes, he will stay as a general.
Because you can look at a heat map of Dustin Martin at the end of the game, and it can look like a heat map of Sam Walsh. It looks like he's just playing all over the ground in the midfield.
But if he starts as a half forward for a lot of those centre bounces,
with a general defender on him,
reset,
he'll be almost exclusively as a forward.
So flip it around, and so let's use Jack Sinclair as the same example again. If he runs in off the from the 50 in defence, and then the ball goes into St Kilda's forward line, and he pushes up, and he gets the quick kick comes out of the St Kilda forward line, and he picks up the ball at the wing, and he's getting these disposals very much in the middle of the ground. Does that still count as time as a defender?
Yep. So it's still where he's playing in terms of the set. There's still 18 people out on the field, and he still has his position on the field relative to everyone else. So it kind of moves with the ball. Correct, yeah. And that's not saying Ross Lyon would not want to end up with 10 midfielders out there. He'll need to still know, okay, who are our 6 defenders, who's behind the ball, blah, blah. So, again, Jack Sinclair would be one that we would watch, and we again, the guys that are tracking matchups are just, they're not watching the ball, they're just watching where everyone's running. They'll understand that Jack Sinclair in the first quarter, when he was general defender, he was 5 metres behind the stoppage. Now he's under the ruckman's nose, and player X is 5 minutes. Let's make the switch. Yep. We can clearly see. So they're not just watching where the ball's going and go, he's on the wing. They're actually, as I said, they're actually looking at an 18-piece puzzle, and there's 18 players that need to fit in that puzzle. To move one piece, you need to replace it with another piece.
Has this answered your question a little bit?
It's answered it in the sense that I understand how it works, but I also still think there's part of it which you can say, and Martin was the example last year, but there are others, and there'll be more that become apparent.
Well, it won't be
as the year
perfect,
rolls on,
is what you're saying.
where it won't be perfect, where people will think, oh, but because you can look at the pure numbers and you say, well, Martin as a forward does this, this, and this, and this. Yeah, but he is around the ball a lot more than Charlie Cameron as a forward. So the numbers are going to be a bit skewed in favour. He's going to have more.
But that's where, and again, that's where we're looking at roles. So you do have the high. Charlie Cameron is not a high half forward, whereas Dustin Martin is. So again, a general defender, we're talking about Jack Sinclair, and if we want to talk about maybe someone like, I don't know, Connor Buderick or Brody Kemp, their jobs are completely different.
They're not going to be.
They're not supposed to have the same stats. So again, I get what you're saying.
There'll be a bit of grey area for these guys.
I still would argue back to you that it's still a forward role that Dustin Martin's performing. No matter where he's doing that on the field, he's still playing as Richmond, one of Richmond's forward lines.
But I think it's a clear distinction to note that if he is starting as a half forward or in the goal square and he rolls all the way up and gets a handball receive in the back pocket, he's still as a forward. It's not you're up in the back half. You're a defender at that point.
Yeah. This is a spicy start to the season 6 of the podcast.
It's interesting how it's done. That's why I think that's
why
a better indication of where people.
And that's why we sit here and we present one number. So I'm presenting 100x and matchup.
Yeah.
What you're talking about, we'd also got where does Dusty Martin win the ball? So we can compare his percentage won in the defensive 50 or the defensive half to Charlie Cameron's, and we can get more sense of pull up this number. Why is Dusty such a good midfielder? Oh, sorry, such a good forward. Well, there you go. You tripped me up quite well. But why is he such a good forward? And it would be things like that. Oh, he's getting more ball in the back half. Yeah. He's doing this, he's doing that. But again, and again, almost thank our lucky stars, we've got the 6-6-6 to fall back on that. After he does perform all that, we watch him and he's like, oh, he's gone back to the forward line.
Yeah.
So before we move on from this is a really interesting discussion, and I'm sure especially if you, with your ears within the four walls, think that this is going to be a more prominent stat as the season goes on. We should come back to this a few times.
I think we will. I think absolutely.
But a couple of notable stats, I guess, from last year when you look at players that, perhaps have a primary position X, and then go to secondary position Y and have either done really well in the secondary position or not as well. Is there any names that jump out at you?
Yeah, as I said, so you can roll it up, and I'll talk about the top 5 soon. So you can roll it up to one number and sort of say player X is plus 7 points above his expected rating based on where he's playing.
Right, yes.
But what it's also good for is those ones that you're always throwing up of where and Petrarca might be one, where is this guy better at when he actually plays? Where is he performing better?
But just to stop you there, but if Simon Goodwin said, right, Christian, we want you to play permanent forward all year. If they did that, we'd all be calling him nuts, wouldn't we?
Well, maybe it's the impact that he has, the short bursts.
No, but exactly. But these numbers say that in that position, he's performing twice as good as I said.
Chicken or the egg? Is him getting the clearances or helping get the clearances for Melbourne and then shifting forward and playing a forward role? If you take him out,
isn't it factoring all of that into that equation?
What do you mean factoring?
So I'm saying if Petrarca's crucial to the clearance that the D's get out of the centre, then he rolls forward at the stoppage and plays as a small forward and is underneath the nose of the ruck or whatever it might be, and he kicks the goal.
But I don't think he can.
Does he get that goal if he's not in the middle?
I don't think he can go from. You can't just interchange back and forth like that.
Well, no, clearly not. But I'm sort of saying when that role is he's obviously it's kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
But
as I said, and Petrarca's probably the hardest one for us to talk about because as I said, that plus 3.3 as a midfielder. He's a gun midfielder.
Yeah.
And his minutes, been quite it's been a small sample as a forward. As I said, it's been over 300 minutes, so it's a decent sample. He's plus 7, so it's like, well, he's a gun forward, but again, plus 3. Where does he rate in Melbourne's midfield? He's probably plus 2 points better than anyone else. Jack Vidy might be plus 1 as a midfielder. So it's like, well, he's still clearly our best midfielder. And it all goes back to exactly why we're sort of talking about 100x. Because when I first looked at ratings, it's like, well, ratings is another number. Brownlow, rankings, everything else, it's a midfielder's. It's a midfielder's number and it's a midfielder's award and things like that. So midfielders are always going to get more opportunity to get higher scores. This actually looks like, okay, when he goes as a forward, he's actually still getting, as I said, the output that Petrarca does is 7 points higher than any other forward in his time down there.
All right, so let's look at some players that I guess, not necessarily saying underperform in their primary position, but actually do better in the secondary position. There's some interesting names here, and I'll kick it off, I guess. So Sam Doherty, his primary position in 2023 was actually in the midfield.
So this is based on majority of minutes, so where you played your most minutes.
Most minutes. And so his his rating or his rating points, expected rating points per 100 minutes was minus 3.69 per 100 minutes as a midfielder.
Centre bounce midfielder.
And it jumped up to plus 1.22 as a wing, so on the outside, for a difference of 4.9. So this is suggesting that Doherty is more damaging and should be playing wing permanently.
Yeah, so that was the biggest change between someone who had played 300 minutes in at least two positions is Doherty's secondary position wing, which I think was only about 30 or 25% of his overall time. He was actually a plus 1.22 rating points, what he was producing on the wing, but below the average as a midfielder, which is probably makes sense of if you just look at Sam Doherty and where you think he would be suited. He is probably suited to the outside and sort of that good ball use and things like that. And it would have been at times where Cripps and Walsh, and earlier in the season where he had to go into the midfield. I think there was a game where he was one of the most experienced midfielders in there because Chera, Cripps and Walsh were all out. So it was probably forced him to play out of position. But again, this is something where you can look at and say, well, we had to play him
at least 300 minutes as well.
Exactly, on the mid and the wing. When you're coming down to 2024 preseason, you say, well, we probably should be looking at pushing Doherty more to the wing and trying to find someone else to be that backup midfield. Another one that sort of went from the inside to the outside is Josh Kelly, who's still good as a centre bounce midfield. So plus 1.64 rating points higher per 100 minutes as a midfielder. But when he's moved out to the wing, 6 rating points higher. So again, almost up there with Petrarca as a forward type levels, where he's just, the ability to sort of be able to put him on a wing. And again, and if you think about the Giants, that probably means that Tom Green, maybe Toby Green, Finn Callahan, those guys are really sort of, controlling the middle. And that's allowed Josh Kelly to sort of provide that the class on the outside. So here's an interesting one.
Which is what he really kind of, made his name for a few years
Rolls
ago.
Royce, right? Using the ball use outside.
Yeah.
Cam Zurhaar's an interesting one. I think this might be more symptomatic again, Melbourne.
This is one that I would look at and sort of, again, you need to dive deeper into the numbers because Cam Zurhaar as a forward is negative 0.66 rating points per 100 minutes.
Yeah.
Not too bad for as a North Melbourne forward that's seeing not much of the ball. As it is, it's comparing you to the rest of the competition. And again, you talk about from 6 years. The reason why these numbers are so good is now we're up to, I think, 13 years worth of data. So we're comparing him to 13 years worth of other sort of, players that have played similar positions. So negative 0.6 rating points per 100 minutes of forward, not too bad, but plus 3.56 as a midfielder, which you think, wow, we've got to throw him in there. But exactly, I think it's the ability for him to go in there and play 5 or 10 minutes. That maybe when he hits the 12 to 15 minute mark of in the midfield.
You can't do it. And so that became another thought I had with players who,
the coaches have their role right, basically.
The players that might not spend an awful lot of time on the ground, forget position. So you're coming on if you're playing 80 minutes as opposed to 100 minutes, are you going to be that extra burst of coming back on and you don't have the fatigue factor as much? Are you going to be able to give more? If you said to Marcus Bontempelli, right, we're going to take 20 minutes off your game, but when you're on the ground, just give it that extra 5-10%. I mean, would his number jump? So I think that's another part of it as well.
So we need to keep moving through, but there are some great names here. So Rory Lobb obviously probably plays predominantly forward at the moment. So minus 2.10 rating points per 100 minutes played below the average. When he has to play in the ruck, plus 1.98. So that's kind of interesting. Chad Warner, better as a forward, apparently, by quite comfortably by 4 rating points per 100 minutes. Petrarca, we mentioned. There's a few other names here. So like Mark Blitzarves as a midfielder, pretty average, sort of that.
These numbers are from last year, right?
Yep, 2023.
And then Blitzarves as a ruck is actually above that. So you see 2.10 above that expectation. So, I mean, look, there's some really interesting ones. We could also go the other way as well. And there are players who are...
have been tried in other positions, but
and it hasn't worked.
And it probably hasn't worked as much. So on top of that list is someone like Levi Casbolt, who again probably... He is a forward. He's negative 2.55 rating points per 100 minutes of forward, so below where he should be, but not too bad. But negative 9.32 when he's thrown into the ruck. So usually put in there because of necessity. Or you're the tallest out there.
Don't do it.
Let's just get Casbolt in there because he's the tallest, but clearly doesn't go well there. Caleb Daniels, an interesting one. Again, because it's based on last year, his 2 positions on this spreadsheet are forward and mid. We know Caleb Daniel as being a 5-6 year vet behind the ball as a general defender. Comparing his main 2 positions last year, though, when he played as a forward, plus 2.76 rating points per 100 minutes. When he plays in midfielder, negative 3.4 rating.
Just right. That's surprising.
But again, I think
inside 50 probably racked up a few.
And again, I feel like that's what Caleb Daniel is. He's a flanker, and without that shouldn't be sort of seen as a dirty word just because he's not an inside ball or an inside midfield. He's better when he's coming either from behind the ball, what he did as a general defender. And it goes back to his junior stuff as a small forward at the under-18 champs. I think about 70% of what he touched turned to a score for South Australia the year that he played, which is one of the best championships.
I still think he's the best 20 to 25 metre kick going round.
Yeah, so makes stuff happen. Nick Martin's another interesting one just quickly because he sort of was on the wing last year, was plus 4.56.
Which is very high.
Winger. They threw him forward and he was negative 0.37. Now there's a big... they're raving on about him moving to half back this year, so it'll be interesting to keep an eye on his number. And again, we'll be able to extrapolate. We'll be able to sort of combine 2023 and 2024. And we'll be able to compare Nick Martin to wing, forward, and general defender by 4 weeks into the season. And really get a feel for do they need to put him back on the wing, or can he play in a secondary?
And so we talked about Sinclair before and how his rating points per 100 minutes, like above the average, was quite high as a back.
Yep.
So 7.16. But then you go, oh, well, he's so much less when he gets thrown into the midfield, but he's still very much above average when you talk about midfielders.
So we spoke about Petrarca being plus 3.3, which is quite good for a midfielder. Jack Sinclair is plus 3.55. So
still excellent.
Yeah, so
Jack Sinclair's a better midfielder than Christian Petrarca.
Per 100 minutes, he's getting more value. That's how this for 2023.
You baited him, but he was happy.
Yeah,
Well,
that's what the numbers will say. Yeah. So for 2023, per 100 minutes time spent in the midfield, Jack Sinclair had more impact per 100 minutes.
Well, there's the title. Of the
and there were only a handful that would be higher than Sinclair.
Yeah. But again, that was probably me looking before I put the 300-minute qualifier on. So I reckon he'd be even less. But again, looking at it overall, you break it down to one number, the best overall rating, and it is Jack Sinclair, number one. So if you compare what he's producing per 100 minutes in whatever position he's playing, he's always plus 5.9 points, rating points higher than what he should be getting no matter where he plays.
Followed by Bontempelli.
So he's number one, Bontempelli second at plus 5.47. Dan Houston third. Taylor Walker fourth, so here's an interesting one. If you just go raw rating points, he's equal with Charlie Curnow, but he played 8 fewer minutes per game than Charlie Curnow and basically produced the same result.
Makes sense,
so
yes.
Comes up the per 100 minutes. Nick Blakey and Zach Butters. So you can sort of see there, Sinclair, Houston, Blakey. It really likes those attacking
defenders.
Guys that take the game on. But again, as a coach, you ask them, and everyone wants one of those guys in their team. So they're your best overall playing. But then you can also just look at who is the best player in a certain position. And again, it's Jack Sinclair again. So whether this ends up being the Jack Sinclair ratings or something, but we spoke about his general defender rating per 100 minutes plus 7.2 rating points per 100 minutes as a general defender. That's the best of anyone that's played at least 300 minutes in a position. And then Petrarca as a forward, the plus 7% that we're talking about, that's the second best. And Errol Goulden, who actually played 326 minutes as a forward last year, plus 6.7, which is the third best. So Errol Goulden as a forward is the third best player in the competition.
Yeah, just off the top of your head, is this something that can really help you when you're looking at super coach kind of players as well? This sort of stuff, where you look at a secondary position and if you can get bargains like this?
If you know that, I would look at this for if you were looking for super coach, probably thinking if you know that Levi Casbolt's going to play ruck this week. We know that they don't have Wits or anything, so it's like, all right, let's avoid Casbolt. Or it's the other way, where it's Petrarca is clearly not going to play forward because they've picked. So, again, you're not going to change Petrarca. He's good in either position, but it's more about if you know that someone's going to have to fulfill a different role coming up forward, you can have a look at this and sort of go, okay, is he going to go well in that position?
Interesting stuff. The Hard X ratings.
Have to do a lot more throughout the year, I think.
I think so. Where are we expecting to see this, just as a general rule? On TV, radio, the clubs use this kind of stuff?
Yeah, so I know Champion Data had a segment on SEN radio last year where Daniel Hoyne was using it. And again, just the way the media works, I think talent works on SEN, that works on Fox as well. So whether they take it to Fox and start using it there, and whether
keep an eye on it.
Yeah, whether it ends up on Channel 7, but yeah, it'll fight its way around the industry, I'm sure.
We're sort of, our footy season is drawing closer, which means the content is starting to come out, Jake.
Yes.
And, it's starting to get very busy on the website, espn.com.au/AFL.
Always busy, but footy now, which is good.
We kicked things off, on Friday, but on Monday we released your best 50 players in the AFL column, which, as we found out last year, it's a thankless task, firstly.
Well, it is.
It's a draining task. Mm-hmm. And I think, as we said in the opener, there's always robust feedback given.
There is. So far, from what I've seen this year, it's a lot less harsh and critical, I must say, which is good.
Or were you preparing for the worst?
Yeah, I think you have to. Whenever you're putting an opinion down, something like that. The thing I always say is you can get every footy fan in the country to do that, to come up with their 50. You will not get two that are exactly the same order, let alone the 50 players. The order as well is just nuts. So you've got to think about it. I'm all for people saying this player shouldn't be there, this player should, higher or whatever. But try it. Like, honestly, try doing it yourself and see how you go, because it's an extremely
If you think about it, so there's probably around 800 players in the league.
800 players.
Maybe
so you're
just
looking
less.
at top 6, top 7% of players. So when you miss when someone doesn't get on,
18 teams
think
times
people-
3, that's 56.
I
So
think-
if you're not in the top 3 players at your club,
yeah.
you
And
can't
obviously
really
some clubs are going to have 5, 6 players. So so I think there's a general feeling that if you're not on this 50, you're no good. Well, you could be in the 7th or 8th sort of percent, that sort of range, and you don't get on.
Yeah, and there would be a few on the stiff list. Do you have a few off the top of your head that didn't make it? Spoilers alert. Of course, you can read this online.
Yeah, I mean, players that didn't make it.
It's free and not behind a paywall.
Yes, which is always good. So we got a few players notable players from last year. Lockie Whitfield didn't make it.
Missed out.
Ben King didn't make it. Tim Kelly didn't make it. Josh Kelly didn't make it.
Isaac Dacos didn't make it.
Isaac Rankin didn't make it. Josh Dacos.
Jeez. Probably the best of Ferris didn't make
Hugh
it.
McCluggage.
Hugh McCluggage. Zach Bailey.
And these are the kind of the ilk of players you're talking about, and you go, these are good players. These are top 100 players.
But then to the point, you go and read the 50 and you think, okay, who are you taking out?
Yeah.
You got to take someone out. You can't pick
for instance,
75
who are
players in
your
the top 50.
50, 49th, and 48th off the top of your head?
So Max King was 50.
Yep.
Dan Houston, 49, who we just heard
talked about.
is a very good footballer. Jacob Wiedering, 48. Andy Brayshaw, 47. Stephen Canelio, 46. So you kind of see where you're going. And I guess you got Canelio and Brayshaw as the end sort of midfielders. And then you're looking at players like Tim Taranto just missed out. You got to drop one of these guys out to put somebody in. Very difficult task.
Yeah. Well, if you think that's difficult, I guess coming up with a top 10 is equally as difficult, right?
Believe it or not, the top 10 actually, top 20 is probably the easiest part of it.
Oh, we were arguing and
You might-
pontificating for a while over the order.
So the order might be a little tricky, but I think in general, if you got everyone to do their own top 20, I reckon you're getting 15, 16 of the same name every single time. It's when you're getting down like 35 to 50, you throw a blanket over a lot of different players, so it gets tough. The top 10 for me was pretty well set from when I first started out doing this, and it didn't really change too much.
Okay.
So shall I run through it?
Oh, spoiler alert! If you want to read the yarn first, feel free to do that. Pause this and go and have a look. But
No,
otherwise,
do that.
They're listening now.
who knows? Go ahead.
It all started at 10. So 10 was James Sicily. I won't give any sort of detail about it. You can read that online, but I'll just give the list. So 10, James Sicily. 9, Clayton Oliver. 8.
No, I think we should have a little bit of a chat about it. I mean, Sicily's probably. I mean, we kind of looked at this on the pod last year when Hawthorn had him in the side, and then when he missed from the side, and just how much they sort of fell apart, and how structurally important he is. And so I know that you're not, the top 50 is not the most valuable players, but
He's one of the most valuable players to his team. Sorry, I thought we were going to press through this. That's all good. I'm more than happy to talk about it. I think he's one of the most valuable players in the true sense of what that award or title would mean. He is extremely valuable, and like you said, he missed 4 games last year through those 2 suspensions, and the Hawks, I think they lost all 4 games by an average of about 49 points per game. They were a completely different side. Not that they were world beaters when he was in there, but they did cause 2 of the biggest upsets of the year and just were a better team. He is a phenomenal defender, one-on-one, reads the play well. He can intercept. He launches a lot of their attacks. He, in my opinion, is the number 1 defender in the AFL right now.
Clayton Oliver was 9th, and I think this is, it's so hard to know and gauge and judge.
Toughest-
because we know what he's been able to do, but what he'll be able to do this year, we're not quite sure. But as you've kind of said, it's leading into this season that you're judging these guys, and he's clearly been a top 10 player for numerous years.
Oh, he has been. I mean, he was a top 10 player not too long after he entered the league. Really, what he did, I think people overlook how good he was so early. Clayton Oliver, and I say with his entry in the piece, he was probably the toughest player to rank out of all 50
He was
because
3rd last year.
Yeah, so I truly believe, I think you got to go one or two ways. You got to keep him as where you think he is, or he falls off completely because there's so many unknowns. I'm happy to back him in. If you're telling me he's playing the full year, he's going to be one of the 10 best players. I'm pretty confident that we know what he does for the Ds.
Well, fingers crossed he can get healthy in mind and in body as well, and play some good footy, because I think he needs that's what's best for him and what's best for the club. So moving further down, a bit of a controversial one, I think. Patrick Cripps at 8, top 10.
I think this would be. So and something else, a little bit of a caveat with this whole exercise is I look at the last 2 years. I think 2 years is a nice window. Looking at one, there's a lot of recency bias if you just got
So
one
we're taking
season.
into account his Brownlow.
So you're taking into account the last. It's not an exact science of every single game, but it gives you a bit of bit more of a scope on a body of work. So looking at the last 2 years, you've got him, as you said, that his Brownlow year, the best year of his career. Then you had last year, which a lot of people thought was a down year, but anything that if you go from Brownlow year to not winning a Brownlow, by definition, it's a down year. He still finished top 10 in the medal
and top 3 for generating scores from clearances, which is what Cripps did at his best. That's sort of the extract he had and getting it on the scoreboard. So he's still, I think his role was underappreciated last year.
I think so, and I think he's still one of the most dominant players on their day in the entire league. I mean, he puts that Superman cape on, and you can't stop him.
Yeah, number 7. This is a man who was unranked last year, so coming with a bullet, really.
Yeah, I mean, Nick Dacos goes without saying, phenomenal rise. He will be the number 1 player on this list in short order, I would imagine.
Wow.
And if this was a list of players you'd want for the next 10 years, he's number 1 already. There's no doubt about it.
Well, if he played every game, he would have won the Brownlow.
Probably, you would say. Yep. So I've got him 7th. I still think, obviously, that there are 6 players better than him going into this season. Yeah. But as I said, it won't be long before he's top of these.
Some of the stats that surround Dacos, especially just through 2 seasons, are quite amazing. I think you've given here to Jake that he's won more disposals through his first 47 games than any other player on record. Yeah, it just goes to show how much of a ball magnet he is.
And when we joke about it, that was 50% of his career is played out of general defence and behind the ball. So he's done it a different way. So it's exciting to think of what this guy could be if he actually gets forward of the ball and has a season as a mid forward. We sort of speak about the office. There hasn't been many players whether it's been done before, to have 30 disposals in a game and kick 40 goals in a season. This guy could be one of the first if he is given that license to play as that mid forward.
Justify this for me though, Jake. The man who did win the Brownlow last year, not in the top 5 best players. Is that not by definition he's the best player?
Well, you'd think so, especially because I love the award so much, and I
love
the player.
Yeah.
Yes. No, he was.
Sorry,
he was 6, so he dropped a few spots as well. But again, I don't think anyone's going to debate the top 5 ahead. And say that he's definitively better.
Don't speak too soon.
People love to crap on the Brownlow anyway and say it's a midfielder's award, just rewards stats and all that stuff. So, Lachie Neale, gun player. We know what he's going to do. Had a phenomenal year. Obviously, there was a little bit of people didn't think he probably deserved the Brownlow, but he probably should have won it the year before. So it all evens out. What he's done at Brisbane in his 5-6 years now is just extraordinary.
That resume is unreal.
It's a Hall of Fame resume
at one club
Brisbane.
within a 5 year
forgetting what he's done.
Yeah.
Forgetting what's done. He's a premiership away. And it feels a long way away now, but you go back to 5 minutes ago in that grand final, how close it was. What would we be saying about Lachie Neale if he was a premiership captain, 2 Brownlows, co-captain? But you know what I mean?
It's a great question. One of the great what ifs, but he's still time. This is the thing. I think the Lions window is well and truly still open.
Top
Number
5?
Yeah, let's whip through this a bit quicker. I gave you a bit of a license. You've taken it.
Top 5, Jeremy Cameron. I think for quite a while he was seen as the no doubt number 1 key forward in the league. Well, he has been surpassed, spoiler alert, but still top 5 player. He was on track for the 100 goals through the first quarter of last season, and
people got excited about that.
But they got excited. He tailed off a bit with injuries and a little bit of form, and the cat struggled a little bit. You're going to be surprised if he comes back this year and boots 80? I don't think anyone will be. So he's 5. Christian Petrarca at 4, another player we just spoke about, can play in the middle, can play forward, and you just can't stop him wherever he is on the ground. I think he's, yet again, another massive chance to win the Brownlow. Number 3 is the guy is the player that has overtaken Cameron, Charlie Curnow. I think he is now the best key position player in the league and certainly best key forward. I don't think it's really up for debate. He's won the last 2 Coleman medals. He's kicked, I think, 25 goals.
Question mark is that he can't quite produce
Hasn't
on
been
the
able to
biggest
do it.
stage against the best teams.
Yeah, so there's 2 things. So didn't fire in finals. Didn't have none of his finals were that crash hot of the 3. But even going through
teams like West Coast.
But even through the home and away season, his best games were against the poor sides, and his worst games were against the good side. So that's what everyone's got something to work on. That's his thing, and that's probably what takes Carlton to the next level.
What are the 2 men above him got to work on?
Number 2, Marcus Bontempelli. Well, he's got to work on winning in one of those Brownlows. Like I said, he's finished runner-up twice. I think a lot of people would...
Too soon, isn't it?
I think a lot of people would say he is the number 1 player in the comp. He can do it all. Doesn't really have a flaw to his game. Kicks goals. Dominates in the midfield. But the guy I've gone as number 1 is Toby Green. I think what he did last year was one of the great seasons.
Yep.
Like, period. I think what he was able to do, taking
Leadership
taking the
capabilities,
captaincy,
yep.
There were question marks on that side of his game. He took his actual game on field to another level. Kicked 66 goals for the year, I think it was in the end. This is a guy that's kicked. I think we overlook the fact someone that's kicked 60 goals in a season in this day and age too. We're not talking about when it was commonplace to kick 60 goals in a season. To kick 60, but he's also someone who we know in his first couple of years was averaging 28, 29 disposals a game.
Yeah.
He is the ultimate
Dynamic
footballer, can do it any which way. The IQ is just insane. And as is the whole crux of this piece, going into this year, you tell me I can pick anyone for the whole year to play fully fit, fully healthy, and you get them for every game. He's my first pick.
Any qualms, Christian?
No, I think it was quite good. Again, I got.
You two collaborate on this quite
exactly.
closely.
I got a good early look, so happy that you got Harris Andrews in there finally. But no,
Harris Andrews was sort of just floating around. It's hard that 30 to 70. You're just forever changing. I would work on it until 11 o'clock at night. Be happy with it. Go to bed, wake up, come back to it, and change 20 names around again. And you could just keep doing it forever.
But I do like the Toby Green. Again, this goes back to the Gary Ablett theory that I always had. So when, Gary Ablett versus Lance Franklin, if you just put them in both in a room, say one of these guys is good at sport, which one is he? You're going to pick Lance Franklin and go, well, he just looks so much better.
Yeah,
but because we'll get what Gary Ablett produced, he became the number one player. Bontempelli, Toby Green, I think it's the same sort of thing. You can't split them as players, but you look at Toby Green and the package he comes in, it's like so unexpected of how good this guy can be for how much he dominates in the air and things like that. So again, you're splitting hairs between those two, but I think it's just that the Toby Green package actually makes it more special what he's been able to do.
Just on Neil again and being sixth, having 5 players finishing ahead of him, winning the Brownlow. 3 of the players ahead of him are ineligible to win the Brownlow because they're forwards. So take them off. So there's really only 2. And it's Bontempelli and Petrarca. And I think those 2 are the guys that... I understand.
Yes.
I don't think there's anybody that is going to take Lachie Neale over Bont or Petrarca.
Jake has said that he is very open to receiving feedback on this, on the proviso that you do your own top 50 and submit it to him before you have a crack at him on Twitter, at JMichaels ESPN.
Or if you say, how can X not be on the list, tell me who you're taking out. Or if people say, give me 5 names, we'll take 5 out.
Them's fine words. All right, well, we might as well go on the record while we are still here and talk about our pre-season predictions and who we think will win the flag, who will be runner-up, wooden spoon, rising star, biggest prizes, biggest slides. We'll do it all. Why not? Christian, I might start with you because I like listening to yours before I decide on mine.
Well,
Can't copy.
Yeah.
Look over my shoulder.
Pre-season predictions.
You've been a bad student.
Let's keep these... no, not at all. Let's keep these relatively brief, but a premier.
I've gone Brisbane.
So have I.
Yeah. Again, I struggle with these in terms of you're always thinking about last year. Like, nothing's changed in the off-season too drastically in terms of list-wise and things like that. But I think they can take the next step this year. Yeah,
I don't think they're done. They're not on the way down yet. So I think the Lions, sometimes you need a bit of luck in finals. I mean, you talk about that last sort of minute and a half and the free kick that if it goes the other way, you just don't know. So I think it's just going to be a reverse of last year. So my premier is Brisbane and my runner-up is Collingwood.
I'm on the Blues.
To win it?
Yep. I think Carlton
had the experience in finals now.
Yeah, had enough experience. They had that roller coaster season where things started pretty well, just went horrific for 9 weeks, and then were able to get on that run and prove that they can win game after game after game. And the emotions through finals, I think there were other players that took their games to new levels. I think Crips will be better this year. As I said, Sam Walsh was phenomenal in finals, the player of the finals. To, Charlie, we spoke about. Harry Mackay was someone who wasn't on my 50.
Big wild card, I think.
But massive wild card, and a player that I don't think anyone's going to be. He could easily kick 60 goals, and no one's going to be surprised if he's a consensus top 30 player by the end of the year again. So, and then the defence as well has come on in leaps and bounds. I think Carlton is primed, and the midfield is going to be what drives it. So,
who are they beating?
They're beating Brisbane, so I've also got Brisbane.
So they're avoiding them in the prelim, avoiding a trip to the Gabba.
Going to avoid them, and but
Brisbane
going to fall again in the grand final, and probably lead to a few changes.
While I got you, your biggest riser?
Biggest riser, Suns.
Suns.
Yeah.
You're backing them. You're backing Dimmer. 80% of the flag list.
It's not so much that I'm backing Dimmer, and it's not so much that I think that I agree with that comment, but I think it's time. I think the list is in a good spot in terms of the age profile, the players that they've got.
Yeah.
We've seen another midfield where you see, we know how good Miller and Anderson and Rowler and Witts, and we saw the emergence of Flanders last year. I think there's just enough now. The depth was always the issue.
Well, the consistency as well was an issue.
Yeah.
You think that another year of experience irons that out as well. And when you do bring in a coach who does have relatively recent experience of getting to the top, they can bring something. I know that it's a bit of a cliche that you bring in a premiership winning coach, but there must be something there that he can offer these players.
Well, I think even forgetting tactically and all that stuff, what he brings to the Suns, I think it's just as much a boost for the players, thinking, this guy wants to coach. This guy obviously is on a good pay package, but he's taken this job. Like he's not going to go there if he thinks they're garbage and he's going to get sacked in 3 years' time.
That's fair enough. Who's rising for you?
Adelaide, who will be part of my big call. So I can
okay. Well, hold on to that one. I think the Dogs. I think the Dogs get back up into the top 4. They just have to, don't they? There's talent on that list.
Yeah, there's talent on every list.
I know there's talent on every list, but I look at that team and I think they need to be better than what they are.
The Bulldogs are a Bont injury away from being a bottom 4 side.
That's a big call. Is that your big call?
That's not my big call, but I don't think that's that
outrageous. That's starting to come of age now.
Yeah, but who's going to get them the ball?
Oh, so Libber and McRae and Bailey Smith out for the year.
Best inside midfielder of last year, but they're an injury.
Top Liberatore is, but Bailey Smith's gone. Well, he's not playing, and McRae is falling
shadow of himself.
Yeah, I think that was it. And again, look at the 100x type thing. That was the role he was playing. I agree with you. They lose Bontempelli, they're not making finals. So I would stick with you.
Whip through these. We keep getting caught up. Who's sliding?
Sliding, Dons. I don't think
from 10th.
Yeah, I think they're going to be bottom. I think they will be a bottom 4, bottom 5 side. I don't think there's going to be a team that's going to have a drastic drop, but I think the Bombers are the team that I'm concerned about. Essendon and Richmond, I think, just not very confident on what they can do this year.
Yeah, I think you're right. The teams aren't going to drop heaps. I don't think there's going to be a massive drop.
Well, I've got my biggest slide is Sydney, but I also put the sort of the quantifier next to it that I don't think any team will drop by more than 4 spots. So if you're calling a big slider, someone to drop 4 spots, that might be
3
Swans.
spots. Yeah. I think Freo into the bottom 4.
Okay. I'm surprised no one said St Kilda.
I just can't.
6th last year?
Yeah. Do they make finals? Not for you, obviously.
Do they make finals this year? Oh, no.
Okay. There you go.
Yeah.
Spoon, West Coast?
I thought you meant the Saints. It's hard for it not to be the Eagles. I mean, really.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. I mean, I think West Coast and North are both going to show more than they did last year.
But I think
they're still the step below, and I think it'll be a battle out of those two.
I think we won't be having discussions about, is it the worst side since Fitzroy, but they'll still be.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure they'll lose a game by 152 points.
Sure, Fitzroy will be brought up once this year.
Yeah, that's the
big call. Brownlow, I think Nick Dacos, if he stays healthy, we saw what he could have done last year, and I think he gets it done.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm going to go this guy for the first time I'm ever picking him, Bont. I think it's time. I mean, it's not a.
But he's a one injury away from the.
Yeah, but he also shows how good he is. I mean, I spoke about him before. He's a phenomenal player, and and it's something that's missing from his resume right now. Really, I mean, I think most people would comfortably say he's one of the best players modern era to not
Not a
win
play
one.
on the umpires' minds. Geez, Bond hasn't got one. Oh, 2 or 3. Oh, 3.
I don't know. I would hope not.
Because you've got the theory about whoever gets interviewed on the ground afterwards.
Well, it's not. It's more so they're interviewing a player. There's just going to be a little bit. The umpire's walking off, just sort of glance over.
Last player he
Oh,
says.
yeah, I was going to give him a 1.
Brownlow?
3 now.
Tom Green, GWS.
Well, I like
was-
that call.
was my one. So again, I might not be this year, but I can guarantee he'll have one in the next 4 or 5. You would have thought.
And the Coleman, I think we're all in agreement on the Coleman medal winner.
I know. I thought I was going slightly left field, but
I thought I was too. But
I've gone Nick Larkey, and it appears we've all on the
Yeah.
mix.
he nails his chances. He's a really good kick for goal. And I think
he's
he's
a bit more.
Yeah,
They'll
he'll get a
they'll
bit more.
Even if they're only 10% better in the midfield, that's
And
you'd
where,
think he's
again,
getting
just-
most of
just
those
as-
extra opportunities.
And that's what I looked at when a very, very quick look at North is they've really stacked their mid. They're
Yeah.
going to get better in the midfield, so they're going to get more ball. There's no one up forward that's going to take.
No.
It's not like Callum Coleman-Jones going to get more games and become the focal point. So well, Nick Larkey's still got that forward line to himself, and he's got a better midfield delivery.
especially if big Cam Zurha goes into the midfield and is plus 0.36 just points per 100 minutes.
Bangs and
On a similar vein, my rising star is actually George Wardlaw, who might be delivering it to him. So I think that he'll get enough opportunities and he'll be the rising star.
I just can't see it being anyone other than Harley Reid. I mean, obvious choice again, but if he plays the full season, if he doesn't get injured, he's the rising star. I think that's an absolute no-brainer.
I only reason I didn't put Wardlaw is because of the body and whether he can play the 22 games. I don't think, again, I don't know. Probably
Solid
more
boy.
of a hope. I'm not sold that it will be Harley Reid if he's going to play that half-back role.
You just know they're going to want to give him the award.
Feel
no
like
matter
there's,
what.
there's a fair few guys, and again, they're not huge names like someone like Angus Sheldrick, and we were just talking about the guys that are going to be put into the gut straight away. So that's who I've sort of gone for. I thought Wardlaw definitely for me, just whether he can get through the whole season. So I've gone Elijah Sardis from Essendon. So again, an inside ball winner, 25 disposals, 7 clearances per game as a junior. No preseason last year, missed the first half of the year, came back and averaged the exact same numbers in the VFL, in his final 8 games in the VFL. So he's going to get that role where if Essendon does get to 7th and 8th and he's played at 80% of their centre bounces, I feel like that's going to just sort of attract more votes from the voting panel.
All right, finally, your big call for the year.
Christian.
Oh, okay, well, I've gone. We'll witness the first showdown prelim. So not only have I got Adelaide slot going up that high, I've got them
So you've also
playing
got Port
Port.
staying
I've got
up
Port
there.
and Adelaide both in the final 4, and hopefully they meet off.
Who wins it?
Be bigger than Gather Round.
Bigger than Gallo, that's the same thing. I've got Port Adelaide being my runner-up, so I've got Port Adelaide
Did you say
making
that
it to the
before?
grand final.
Oh, yeah, did we go through that?
I think I missed that one. But
First podcast
again,
back. You know,
Port Adelaide as runner-up, that goes against all of what the stats say in terms of, we spoke about their defence is just not there yet. But that's what they've recruited for.
exactly,
So
they've
I've put
recruited
my
for
hat
it.
on
Yep.
something. I'm going on something I haven't seen yet, but I feel like they're going to fix their problem and hopefully their strengths just stay. So
Big call.
Did debate Port as my slider, but no, I rate that. Well, I had a big call. So I thought, my big call was Tom Green was going to finish top 3 in the Brownlow.
he's going to win it.
Then Christian said he was going to win, and I said, well, that can't be my big call now. So I've had to go with something else that I've been saying quite a bit in the off season, and it's Rowan Marshall, and it goes against everything I say about Ruckman. But I love Rowan
We
Marshall.
should insert some clips of you
Yeah.
talking crap about Ruckman, but
He will. So there's kind of two parts. He will finish the year as a no doubt undisputed top 10 player in the league, which obviously will mean a couple of things. He'll be the All-Australian
Ruck.
ruck,
We'll have to overtake players like Max
and it
Gawn.
won't be. It'll get to the end of the year. And it won't really be a debate. It'll be pretty well clear. It's Marshall's spot.
But you have the Saints sliding.
And sorry,
But you have the Saints sliding.
no, I don't have the same. Well, I don't have. They weren't my slider.
Oh, okay. But you have them sliding. You said that
They
before.
can slide. They can slide.
You're never making finals. But they
No,
got
I
the
don't
top
think.
10
I
player
don't think
in
they
the
will.
finals.
I don't think they will.
We've got the
play
best
finals.
defender. We've just been praising Jack
It
Sinclair.
doesn't matter. Bond last year nearly won the Brownlow. The Dogs didn't play finals. So, yeah, Marshall, and the other part of it is, I think he'll poll 18 to 20 Brownlow votes this season. I think he's that good, that important. Wins so much ball, tackles, clearances, inside 50s, contested ball, uncontested ball. He kind of does everything, and he does everything pretty
Not
well.
your traditional Ruckman.
Yeah, I'm big on him. I think he could be a star.
Mine is North is going to win 8 games this year, but they're still going to finish in the bottom 4. I just think that they have
8
enough
games?
pluck, and they'll snag a few. They might get a team down in Hobart and just jag one here or there. And I just think that they'll win. It's kind of like Hawthorn a couple of years ago where they
Hawthorn
won
last year.
7 or 8, the last couple of years. And you go, oh, that's not too bad, but they still finish in the bottom 4. I think Fremantle might slide a bit more, and then you talk about Richmond, Essendon.
So we
think the gap is tightening, right? So maybe the gap's going to tighten a bit.
Who was 15th last year? I feel like 8 wins is a lot to finish bottom 4.
Is it?
I don't know. Maybe not.
7 or 8. I think Cawthorn.
I don't know. Gold Coast won 9 last year. They were 4th.
I was going to say 28, 36 points is on the ladder.
So I think you still have
not the biggest call. I would have preferred if you went 10 wins, but
and still finish in the bottom.
Wait, just
10 wins overall.
Go a bit.
I think 8's pretty
just back
big.
them in.
No,
8. So they're going to go from 3 to 8.
It's a gargantuan call.
Okay.
It's not Zach Lowe's going to win the Brownlow. What was it? Brownlow Rising Star. And North.
So your call is essentially North Melbourne will rise from 17th to 15th. Okay, that's a massive call.
Come on now. Very good. Hey, some new rules have come in this year as well. We will just really whip through these. The sub's going to continue, but they're going to be named a bit earlier. So they're going to be named from an extended interchange instead of having the emergencies and then naming a sub. So there's a bit more clarity about who's going to be playing on game day a little bit earlier, which is nice. They'll still be named only an hour out from...
Chris Scott went like that.
Yeah, the old late change. Smothers and runtown tackles are going to be more heavily scrutinised, probably obviously in the wake of the Gus Brayshaw and the Maynard collision. Probably a good thing, I think.
Everyone's pretty happy with
that. The AFL
Yeah.
needed to make that change really quickly, and I'm kind of glad to see they have.
Yep.
Even though, obviously, hindsight a wonderful thing. You would have liked that to have been implemented at the start of last year, but it is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a change in interpretation of the laws of the game to permit straight arm blocks in a ruck contest. So no more of you blocked him out of the ruck contest, the stronger ruckman giving away a free kick.
I can't tell if you like that or dislike
Love that.
Okay.
I questioned this rule when it came out because I haven't seen the full... So the ruling of the ruck is you have to allow the other ruckman to compete for the ball.
Yes.
But then they've brought in this one. So whether we're going to end up with, you're allowed to stiff arm him, but you still have to let him compete for the ball. So
provided the player still contests the ball.
Yeah,
so if you can stiff arm, but then you're contesting the footy, so I guess it's kind of...
But the guy you're stiff arming has to be able to contest the footy as well, according to the wording of the rules. So I find this one could be getting a little bit confusing.
Just
because
stiff arm's not that
but
good.
I really disliked when you, as a ruckman, got the good position, then tried to protect your own space, and then you gave away a free kick. So I'm happy to see that that's been tweaked, and we'll see how it goes there.
Yep.
And here's the strangest one from the off-season. Whistling from an interchange bench. A minor amendment to the regulations has been introduced prohibiting whistling from the interchange bench. This change is a result of excessive whistling from club officials.
So who's bothered by this?
Have you ever noticed it as a fan?
No,
media box on TV?
No,
Never.
don't think I've ever noticed it.
Is someone imitating the umpire's whistle?
I think you notice it more. You notice it more if you would go down and watch a game of local footy. You're hearing kind of a bit more stuff. I don't think you hear that in the AFL, like especially when you get crowd noise and commentary or whatever.
Whistling.
I've never noticed that.
So obviously, maybe an AFL exec or an AFL employee who's down on the bench is just, just keeps.
But it's not about it. It sounds too similar to the umpires.
No.
It's just
maybe it's just
an annoyance.
too much communication. I don't know. Maybe that's what the runners are for.
Yeah.
Who knows? Hey, usually at this time of the pod, we throw to something called red time as the clock ticks down on the episode. But we did sort of say off the top that we have some exciting news, and it's that we're finally going to be doing 2 episodes a week.
Yes.
And we're going to call it red time because, that's what we call the segment, and it's just sort of easy, and it's within our, we've got the graphics ready to go for that episode as well. So it kind of makes a lot of sense. But basically, it's going to come out every Thursday ahead of the weekend of footy. It's going to feature Jared Barker, who has been in the host chair of this podcast.
Absolutely,
a few times.
He'll be back in my seat next week
as well. And you'll be with him every week, and perhaps some guests to feature along the way. But first episode next Thursday. That's March 7. What's the vibe? What are we going to be expecting from a red time?
We're going to be going through the hottest sort of topics in the sport and just a bit more, not rapid fire, but just shorter, sharper, getting through more topics and just sort of opinions on some of the biggest issues, biggest talking points, debates in the sport. Should be a lot of fun.
Excellent. So we've been campaigning for a while to get an extra episode per week, and we've
been a bit of a slog, but
the money has been unlocked, and
we're
Disney
there.
has given us the key to the studio. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to see this. Fellas, we should wrap things up there. It's been a great first episode. Great to be back in the studio with you. Great to be talking footy again.
It is
We'll be
good.
back next week, and you'll be back twice next week, as we just alluded to.
No, I'll be back once, as I just alluded to.
Oh, no, yes, of
I
course,
won't
you're
be,
away.
I won't
Jeez,
be
comes
here.
in for one episode.
He's already traded. He's already traded red time for this one.
Yeah.
He said he was going to go to Japan and run the marathon, and suddenly it's become a half marathon, and now it's like, oh, geez, will he run it all? So he's just swanning off to Japan to have some sushi and back in time for the start of the season.
I will. So yes, I'll be back. I'll be back for game one of what I'm calling round one. I refuse to call it opening round. It's round one.
A whole nother can of worms.
But yeah, I'll be back for that, and with red time with Jared, so it should be fun.
That'll be good. It'll be good. Very much thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. Season 6, we're excited to get cracking into it. Thank you for listening, and we'll speak to you in the next one.